I didn't expect her to sit so close. Not her. Not tonight. She poured the whiskey with a steady hand, amber sliding over ice, the glass clinking softly like it was announcing something I wasn't ready to hear. When she handed it to me, her fingers brushed mine, light, quick, but long enough that I knew she hadn't pulled away by accident. Her name was Claire. My girlfriend's aunt. Mid-40s, graceful in a way that made every movement look practiced yet natural. She wasn't the loudest person in the room, she never needed to be. The air seemed to shift when she walked in, and I'd caught myself noticing too many times. Tonight was worse. Or maybe better. We were alone in her living room. The others had drifted off to bed hours ago. The only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the ticking of a wall clock, too loud in the silence. "Strong enough?" she asked, easing back into the chair across from me, though her knees pointed slightly toward mine. She tucked one leg under the other, and the fabric of her dress shifted, catching the light. "It's perfect," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. I tried to sip casually, but the whiskey burned hotter under her gaze than it ever had on its own. Claire tilted her head, studying me like she was weighing what not to say. Her eyes were steady, calm, but there was something beneath it, something restless. She looked away first, reaching for her own glass. I should have spoken, changed the subject, made it safe. Instead, I sat in the quiet, listening to the sound of her sip, the faint click as she set her glass down. My chest felt too small for my breath. "You don't talk much," she said finally, not unkind, almost teasing. I gave a nervous laugh. Maybe I just don't want to say the wrong thing. Her smile was small, fleeting, and for a second I thought she might press further. But she didn't. She just leaned forward, her elbows resting lightly on her knees. The neckline of her dress shifted as she did, and I looked away too quickly, heat creeping up my neck. When I looked back, her eyes were on me again, steady this time, unblinking. The silence grew heavy, filled with everything neither of us was willing to admit. My hand tightened around the glass. Hers reached toward me, as though she might take it, but instead her fingers stopped just short, grazing my wrist before retreating. "Sorry," she said softly. But it didn't sound like an accident. The whiskey sat untouched now, forgotten. All I could focus on was the faint warmth her skin had left behind, a ghost of touch that made my hand tremble. Then, without a word, she stood. My chest tightened. She crossed the small space between us and, instead of heading past me, she lowered herself onto the arm of my chair. The cushion shifted under her weight, and I could feel the nearness of her perfume, subtle but close, the warmth radiating off her skin. Her hand brushed my shoulder, casual but not. Her eyes found mine again, and this time they didn't let go. "Comfortable?" she asked, her voice low, almost playful, though her throat tightened slightly on the word. I opened my mouth, but nothing came. My pulse was too loud in my ears, drowning out thought. And then, just as the silence stretched, as her hand lingered and the world shrank to nothing but her, the sound of a door opening down the hall cut through the moment. Claire froze. Her hand pulled back slowly, her breath catching. We both turned toward the hallway, waiting for whoever it was, waiting to see if what had just passed between us would be buried, or exposed. The sound from the hallway faded. A door shut again, leaving the two of us in the dim room, silence thick enough to feel. Claire exhaled slowly, as if she'd been holding her breath for too long. She shifted back into her chair, smoothing her dress down with a deliberate calm that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Almost midnight," she said, glancing toward the clock, though I knew she wasn't really interested in the time. I nodded, unsure what to do with my hands, with my voice, with the heat still lingering in my chest. "Your glass is still full," she added after a moment, softer this time. "I got distracted," I said. That earned me a faint smile, the kind that flickered and disappeared before it could settle. She took a slow sip of her own drink and set it aside, her fingers resting lightly on the rim for a second longer than necessary. I wanted to say something, anything to close the distance the interruption had forced back between us. Instead, I asked, "You always drink this late?" "Not always." Her eyes stayed on the glass. "Sometimes I don't feel like sleeping." The way she said it was casual, but not. There was a weight underneath, an emptiness she wasn't trying hard to hide. I caught myself staring at the faint crease near her temple, the tired grace in the way she held herself. "Bad dreams?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I had the right. Her lips parted like she might answer, but she just shook her head. No. Just, the quiet. She lifted her gaze to mine. The house is too quiet. Something in her tone made my chest tighten. She looked away quickly, reaching for her glass again, though she didn't drink. I thought about asking more, about pushing, but instead I just said, I know what you mean. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, like she hadn't expected that. My place, I explained. When I'm there alone. Feels like the walls are listening sometimes. I gave a small, nervous laugh, then regretted it instantly. But she didn't laugh. She nodded, slow, as if she understood more than I wanted her to. The silence that followed wasn't as heavy as before. It was softer, threaded with something I couldn't quite name. She leaned back, her body angled toward me now, closer than before. The faint scent of her perfume carried across the small space, something floral, clean, but with an edge that lingered. Her hand shifted, almost absent-mindedly, brushing against the armrest of my chair. Just the back of her fingers grazing the fabric where my arm rested. Not quite touching, but enough that my skin reacted as if she had. I swallowed hard. People would think this is strange, wouldn't they? The words came out before I could stop them. Her eyes snapped to mine, sharp, searching. Then, softer, why do you say that? I hesitated. Because you're, my voice faltered, older. And your girlfriend's aunt, she finished for me, her voice calm but edged with something harder. She looked down at her hands. Trust me, I'm aware. The way she said it, not defensive, not ashamed, just honest, made the air between us crackle even more. I wanted to tell her I didn't care. That none of it mattered when she looked at me the way she did, when her voice made my chest feel unsteady. But the words stuck, and all I managed was a quiet, still. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing just slightly. Still what? I didn't answer. My throat wouldn't let me. The silence stretched again, until she leaned forward. This time, her hand did touch, resting lightly on my shoulder, warm and deliberate. My body went rigid under her touch, though every part of me leaned toward it. She let it stay for a beat too long before pulling back. You should get some sleep, she said softly. But her hand didn't quite leave right away. Her fingertips slid off my shoulder slowly, as if reluctant. I nodded, but my eyes didn't move from hers. The clock ticked. The room breathed. And when she finally stood, she brushed past me close enough that her hair grazed my cheek. She didn't apologize this time. At the doorway, she paused. Looked back once. Held it. Then she was gone, leaving the air still buzzing, leaving me with nothing but the echo of her touch and the question of what I would do the next time we were alone. The next evening, it happened again. I'd told myself not to linger, not to wait for her. But somehow I found myself in the kitchen after everyone else had drifted upstairs. She was already there, rinsing a glass at the sink, her hair loose this time, catching the dim light. You're up late, I said, though it came out quieter than I meant. She turned, startled, then smiled faintly. And you're not? I stepped inside, the hum of the fridge filling the silence between us. Couldn't sleep. She set the glass on the counter, drying her hands with slow, careful movements. I watched her fingers longer than I should have. Another drink, she asked. I nodded, though I didn't really want one. What I wanted was her attention. She poured, the liquid catching in the light, her sleeve sliding up to reveal the pale skin of her forearm. I swallowed hard, unable to look away. When she handed me the glass, her fingers brushed mine again. This time, neither of us pulled back immediately. The moment stretched, a second too long, then another. You're staring, she said softly, not accusing, not amused. Just, noticing. I opened my mouth, closed it again. My throat felt tight. I wasn't, you were. Her voice was steady, but her hand lingered on mine, warm, unmoving. I should have let go. Instead, I shifted closer, the kitchen shrinking around us. The clock ticked too loud, the air too heavy. Claire, a buzz split the moment. Her phone lit up on the counter, vibrating against the wood. We both flinched. She pulled back quickly, snatching the phone, her breath uneven. She glanced at the screen, then flipped it face down. Wrong time, she muttered, almost to herself. The space between us filled with silence again. Only now it was sharper, charged. I set the untouched glass down beside hers. My hand trembled slightly against the counter. I shouldn't be here, I said, though I didn't move. She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes searched mine like she wanted me to mean it, like she needed me to give her a reason to step away. But I didn't. She took a small step closer, so near I could feel the warmth radiating from her. My breath caught. "This is wrong," she whispered. Her voice cracked at the end, betraying her steadiness. "I know." My words came out ragged. Her hand rose, almost without permission, brushing the side of my arm. A simple touch, but it sent a tremor straight through me. "Someone could," she trailed off, shaking her head. Her eyes flicked to the doorway, then back to mine. "We're just talking," I said, though we both knew it wasn't true. Her lips parted slightly, her chest rising and falling too quickly. "It doesn't feel like talking." The silence after that was unbearable, heavy, electric, pulling us closer by the second. My body leaned before I realized it, and hers met me halfway. The distance closed. Inches now. Her breath mingled with mine, warm, uneven. My hand lifted, stopping just shy of her waist. Her eyes dropped to my mouth, then back up, steady but trembling all the same. We were right there. One tilt, one heartbeat away. And then, footsteps creaked overhead. A floorboard groaned. Both of us froze, breath suspended. She stepped back quickly, hand falling to her side, eyes darting to the ceiling. My chest ached with the emptiness where her warmth had been. We waited, listening. The footsteps faded, then silence again. She exhaled shakily, rubbing her temple. "We can't," but her voice broke before she finished. I reached out without thinking, catching her hand as it dropped. She didn't pull away. Her fingers tightened around mine instead, trembling but sure. The words hung there, unspoken, dangerous, as we stood in the dim kitchen, bound together by everything we shouldn't want and couldn't stop. I told myself I wouldn't go looking for her again. But it was like gravity. Every time the night grew quiet, my steps pulled toward where she was. This time, I found her in the den. She was curled into the corner of the couch, a blanket draped over her lap, the glow of a lamp softening the lines of her face. She looked different in the low light, younger, but also lonelier. "You're restless," she said without looking up. I hesitated in the doorway. "So are you." Her eyes flicked up, steady, almost daring me to argue. But I didn't. I stepped inside, my pulse hammering in my ears. She shifted the blanket, wordlessly leaving space beside her. My chest tightened. I sat, too close but not close enough. The cushion dipped with my weight, tilting her slightly toward me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the faint ticking of the heater and the uneven rhythm of our breaths. Finally, she whispered, "We can't keep." Her words trailed off, lost in the silence she couldn't finish. "I know." My voice was low, rougher than I intended. Her hand tightened on the edge of the blanket, knuckles pale. "Then why are you here?" I turned to her, the question cutting deeper than she knew. My answer came before I could stop it. "Because I can't stop thinking about you." Her breath caught, sharp, audible. She closed her eyes like the words pained her. Or thrilled her. "Maybe both." "That's not fair," she whispered. "I'm not trying to be fair." Silence again. Thicker now. Her fingers loosened, trembling slightly as they let go of the blanket. I leaned forward, my hand rising without permission, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The softness of it against my fingers sent a shiver through me. She didn't pull away. She leaned into the touch, just barely, like her body betrayed her better judgment. "Claire," her name felt dangerous on my tongue. Her eyes opened, locking with mine. "You don't know what you're doing." "Then tell me." My hand lingered at her cheek, my thumb grazing the edge of her jaw. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she leaned closer, the scent of her hair filling the air between us. My heart pounded so loud I was sure she could hear it. "You're too young," she whispered finally, though her body shifted nearer, not away. "Then stop me." She didn't. Her hand rose slowly, hesitantly, and pressed against my chest. Not to push me back, just resting there, feeling the beat that refused to calm. The room seemed smaller now, the light dimmer, the air thicker. Every inch between us buzzed like it wanted to collapse. "This will ruin everything," she breathed. "Or it won't," I said. My forehead almost brushed hers now, my lips a breath away. Her hand gripped my shirt, trembling, pulling me closer instead of holding me off. Her eyes darted to my mouth, lingered there, then snapped back up. We hovered in that impossible space, one breath, one heartbeat from giving in. And then, a sharp knock at the door. We froze, our bodies suspended in the moment, caught at the very edge of something we couldn't undo. Her hand clenched tighter in my shirt. My hand stayed at her jaw. Neither of us moved. Neither of us breathed. Another knock, louder this time. She whispered my name, but it sounded nothing like a warning. It sounded like surrender. The knock rattled through both of us. Claire's breath hitched against my cheek, her fingers gripping my shirt so tightly I felt the fabric strain. A voice followed. "Claire? You awake?" It was her sister. My girlfriend's mother. Claire jerked back like she'd been burned, scrambling to her feet. She smoothed her hair, her dress, every inch of her body suddenly stiff with composure. I stayed frozen on the couch, heart slamming, the ghost of her warmth still clinging to my skin. "1 second," she called out, her voice pitched too bright, too casual. She glanced at me sharply, a warning flickering in her eyes before she slipped to the door. I sat there, chest heaving, listening to the low murmur of voices. Her sister asked if she was all right, if she'd been drinking alone again. Claire laughed it off, a laugh that sounded brittle to me but seemed enough to satisfy. The door closed again. Silence swallowed the room. She didn't turn back right away. She stood at the door, one hand braced against the frame, her shoulders rising and falling in uneven breaths. "Claire, don't," she snapped, too quick, her voice raw. She turned then, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't before, fear, sharp and naked. "She thinks I'm fragile," she whispered. "She thinks I've been lonely for years." If she knew. Her words broke off. She pressed her fingers to her temple, shaking her head. This would prove her right. The weight of it settled heavy in my chest. This wasn't just age or family. This was history. Her history. I stood slowly, unsure whether to move closer or keep distance. "Lonely?" I asked, careful, low. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. "I was married once. Briefly. He left. And since then, I've kept myself safe. Walls high enough no one could reach me." She gave a shaky laugh. "And here you are, climbing them without even trying." I took a step closer, my throat dry. "I didn't mean to." "Yes, you did." Her voice was sharp again, but softer underneath. She looked at me finally, eyes glassy in the lamplight. "You wanted me to notice." I didn't deny it. Couldn't. The silence stretched, the air thick with everything between us. Her hand slipped from the doorframe, hanging at her side. I wanted to reach for it, to anchor her trembling fingers in mine. But I didn't move. Instead, she moved past me, brushing too close, the edge of her shoulder grazing my arm. My body went rigid, heat sparking where we touched. She crossed to the couch, but didn't sit. She just stood there, hands clenched, breathing unevenly. "Do you know what people would say?" she asked. "They'd call me desperate, reckless. They'd say I took advantage." I closed the distance slowly, until I was just behind her, close enough that I could feel her warmth, her unsteady breath. "And what would they say about me?" She tilted her head back slightly, just enough that I caught the outline of her jaw, the tremor in her throat. "That you didn't know better." "I do." My voice was a whisper, right at her ear. Her whole body shivered. She turned then, sudden, her face inches from mine. Her eyes burned with a mix of fear and hunger. "Say it," she demanded, her voice breaking. "Say what you want from me." The words rushed out before I could catch them. "You." Her lips parted. Her hands trembled at her sides, then rose, almost touching my chest, stopping just shy. The electricity between us was unbearable now, every breath a dare. "We can't come back from this," she whispered. "Then don't," I breathed. Her hands finally landed against me, palms flat, heat searing through the thin barrier of fabric. She leaned in, so close that her forehead brushed mine, her breath mixing with mine, ragged, unstoppable. The air snapped taut, attraction and fear bound into one impossible knot. And then she pulled back, just an inch, her eyes wide, unreadable. "Meet me tomorrow," she said, voice shaking but sure. "No more hiding in the dark. If you mean this, prove it." Her hands dropped. She stepped away, leaving the space between us charged and aching. The decision hung in the air like a match about to strike, dangerous, irreversible, waiting to burn. I almost didn't go. I told myself 100 reasons to stay away, to let the moment dissolve into memory. But when the clock crept past midnight, I found myself at her door anyway, my hand hovering, trembling before I finally knocked. The door opened almost instantly, as if she'd been waiting. Claire stood there barefoot, her hair loose, her face stripped of any practiced calm. Just her. Vulnerable, unguarded. Neither of us spoke. She stepped back, letting me in. The living room was quiet, lit only by the faint glow of a lamp. A blanket hung abandoned on the arm of the couch. It looked like she hadn't slept at all. I stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, heart pounding, until she closed the door and leaned against it, arms crossed, as though holding herself together. "You came," she said finally, her voice low, steady only on the surface. "You asked me to." Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp and searching, then softened. She pushed off the door and walked toward me, slow, deliberate. Every step made the air feel thicker. When she stopped, she was close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off her. Close enough that if I leaned just slightly, my chest would brush hers. "Last chance," she whispered. "To walk away." My throat tightened. "Do you want me to?" Her silence was an answer in itself. I lifted my hand, hesitating, trembling, and touched her face. My fingers brushed the edge of her jaw, sliding into her hair. She closed her eyes at the contact, her breath breaking in a quiet gasp. "Tell me to stop," I said, my voice rough, low, barely holding steady. She opened her eyes then, and for the first time, I saw no walls, no defenses. Just her. "I can't," she whispered. The words pulled me closer before I could think, my forehead pressing to hers, our breaths tangling, uneven and desperate. My other hand found her waist, hesitant at first, then surer when she didn't pull away. Her fingers clutched at my shirt again, not to push me back but to anchor herself, to keep from unraveling. "This is reckless," she breathed, her lips so close they brushed the corner of my mouth. "I don't care." We hovered there, suspended in a moment too fragile to last, too powerful to resist. Every heartbeat pressed us nearer, every breath tangled us tighter. And then she kissed me. It wasn't soft. It wasn't careful. It was raw, trembling, almost angry in its release. Years of her restraint, weeks of my longing, everything broke in that instant. I kissed her back, my hands pulling her closer, her body fitting against mine like it had always been meant. The world outside the two of us vanished. When she finally tore herself away, she didn't step back. Her forehead rested against mine, her breathing ragged, her hands still fisted in my shirt. "This changes everything," she whispered. "I know." Her eyes searched mine, desperate, frightened, but also alive in a way I hadn't seen before. "You don't understand what you've done." "I do." I brushed my thumb over her cheek, wiping away the tear that had slipped free. "And I'd do it again." She let out a shaky laugh, half sob, half relief. Then she leaned into me, her arms wrapping tight, pulling me in as if she couldn't stand the thought of letting go. For the first time, there was no hesitation, no denial. Just the truth, messy, undeniable, shared between us. We understood each other now. And there was no turning back. The kiss lingered between us long after our lips had parted. The room was quiet except for our breathing, quick and uneven, as though we'd run a race neither of us had trained for. Claire didn't move at first. Her forehead pressed against mine, her hands still curled in the fabric of my shirt. She stayed there, clinging, and I stayed still, afraid to break the fragile peace that had settled over us. Finally, she whispered, "I've spent years telling myself I'm fine alone." Her voice cracked, low and unsteady. "That no one could want me like this. Not anymore." I pulled back just enough to see her face, the shine of her eyes in the lamplight. "You're wrong," I said simply. Her lips trembled into something between a smile and disbelief. "You're too young to know what you're saying." "Maybe," I admitted. "But I know what I feel. I know I can't stop thinking about you, even when I try. And I know you feel it too." Her silence was answer enough. The way her fingers tightened around mine, the way her chest rose and fell too fast, the way she didn't step back. "I'm scared," she said, almost inaudible. "So am I." I slid my hand